Hello, I am Rowland, and this is my senior presentation. Who am I? I am currently a PDP major at the University of North Florida, focusing in on oil-based painting and screen printing along with relief to create an installation series for my capstone project. I go by the pronouns he, him, his, and a factor of my life that influences a large body of my work is that I am demisexual and bisexual. I am a member of the queer LGBT community and am proud of it. I also come from a background of stained glass artist, which is something that I try to reference into my current body of work as well. And I try to incorporate all of this into an amalgamation that produces the work you will see today. But first, what are the references of artists that I look to? The first one would have to be Jessamine Moroccan. The way that she uses old masters and art history and recontextualizes those poses and iconography to talk about gender and female roles and breaking it down and recontextualizing it to a modern audience with new meaning in her own content is something that inspired me to do that with queer activism and relating that image to my own work of borrowing from the past. Keenan Wiley, of a similar vein, he focuses more in on African American culture and queer and masculinity, with recontextualized into the old stuff, blatantly stealing from past poses such as size and compositions of the piece, such as Napoleon leading the army piece. Classic example. He also does stained glass itself, which was just a motif that I also wanted to steal and use in my own work, so this was another great influence. Third and final one is less of a content influence and more of a technical influence in my body of work. Lucian Freud paints very direct and heavy, and that's something I try to do in my own figure painting style, and I find that his method is the best to my needs. Themes and concepts. These past works here are really the first time pieces that I delve into working with the figure as a way to express queer and gender and sexuality awareness and acceptance and bringing it in. On the left, you'll see my one of my more recent oil paintings where I depict the figure, trying to just blend that. That's more of a technical piece. The ones on the middle and the right are more diving into that queer identity, queer acceptance, and tipping my toe into waters. And then there's the project that sparked my capstone's main goal of just being bold and brash about the acceptance of identity, of acceptance. Was the poster project for my screen printing class. It is titled This is Masculine. It is a series on Bristol board showcasing a body type that was deliberately picked because it is seen as too feminine and breaking down toxic masculinity roles, showcasing that yes, this person's still masculine, yes, body modification, jewelry, being thin built, nail polish, all of it is still masculine, so long as that person identifies as such. That is the main goal of my body of work in this one. Process, I begin with a sketch, and then I try to translate down to a more refined sketch, which is then tweaked and processed into Photoshop and creating a stencil for screen printing. And then I begin building up the layers with multiple stencils, building it up until you get the final product you see on the right. Going back to my painting process, this is just a quick rundown, and I'll go more in depth when we get to the Queer Cathedral installation project. But I begin with grisaille, an underpainting, then glazes to build up my figures. Queer Cathedral. I began this project initially only going to do the triptych and oil painting, but then as I progressed, I realized that this needed to be a full-on installation project for me to convey the themes I wanted to talk about, so I broke it up into 3 mediums and 3 main chunks. That being the triptych, the ceiling in relief, and then the stained glass homages and screen printing on the walls. Here is me sketching out the ideas on this slide. This is an image of the triptych to scale sketch, so I get a layout of how I'm going to place my figures. Once I had a rough idea of where I wanted all my figures, I had already collected all my references over the winter break, so I had a good idea of how this was going to come about. I then transferred it onto the panels using a projector. I then go into the grisaille layer, which I use Gamsol, raw umber to put down the basic forms and shadows of the figures, of the architecture, and the basic shapes, so I understand where I'm painting when I go further into detail. For the interior panels, I did something a little bit different by using more brighter colors to mimic the pride flag for the grisaille stage. Here I blocked it in with some raw umber to build up the more neutral tone figures such as the stone in the figures. Here you can see I've built up more layers. I'm starting to render the columns and the architecture. The figures have still been untouched because they need a special palette. Here you can see all of the figures have been begun, all the flesh tone of the figures are done. I'm about to go in with the cloth touch, and the sky has been darkened. Things are coming together. Here's a close-up shot on two of the more finished figures of the triptych. You can see my reference to Lucian Freud, his ability to just directly paint thick, limiting glazes to just get the details more refined. Here is the relief block. These are images of it being carved and its first inking before being put on the press. For this, I chose to use various pride flags as my substrate to hold the ink, and these will be held together for the ceiling aspect of the roof. And here are my final flags. I have chosen these 5, which are the bi-gender flag, the bisexual flag, transgender flag, pansexual flag, and the male homosexual flag, which will be hung together as a homage to Sistine Chapel storytelling panels of how the roof is done, as an homage to that for my queer cathedral. Here are my references for the various artists and techniques I have done. And on this last slide, I'd like to thank you very much for listening to my presentation. If you want to see more of my work in the progress shots of Queer Cathedral, you can follow my Instagram at an artist named Storm. And thank you for having your time.